Welcome to Recogs, the show where we learn how the world's best business operators build consumer brands from sourcing to selling. Brought to you by Manufactured. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands manufacture, finance, and distribute inventory across 20 industries and 25 countries. If you're interested in learning more, check out manufactured.com. Our guest today is Jonathan Elbaz, founder of Boz. Boz produces the Gumline Cleaner that targets your gums to keep them clean and healthy. We discuss how he decided to start Boz, from prototyping and finding the right manufacturers, why his initial sales channel just didn't work, D2C and getting to Erewhon, and much, much, much more. Without further ado, here's Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, Mike?
Doing well. Thanks again for coming on the show. So want to talk about your company, Boz. What was kind of the aha moment or the moment that kind of led you to found the company?
So growing up, I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. The problem was I never really knew with deep clarity what it is I wanted to do as far as what type of business I wanted to start. My father is a periodontist in Beverly Hills. His specialty is fighting gum disease, and we were chatting one evening, and he's the type of person where he was like lamenting the products that his patients are using to help them fight gum disease, because a lot of them just haven't been innovated in the past 30 plus years. And so they're bad products that patients don't enjoy using. They come to see him because their oral hygiene isn't up to par in part because of the products that haven't really been innovated. And so he thought of an idea of creating a clinically effective product that could help his patients improve their oral hygiene. And I took it one step further, and I thought, why don't we start a brand instead of a product? Like, why don't we widen this up to create a brand? Back then, at 2017, the players in the oral care space, the Quips, the Burst, etc., they aren't the big powerhouses that they are now. And so I really saw an opportunity to basically capture space in our bathrooms by developing clinically effective, user-friendly, and also eco-friendly products. So that's kind of how that started.
That's awesome. Now, what specifically on the innovation front, and if we can talk a little bit about the R&D that you had to do for the first bit of starting what became Boz, what was not being innovated on from like a product standpoint that you feel that the Boz cleaner has been innovative?
That's a great question. So from my standpoint, a lot of products that are on the market are single functional. By that I mean toothbrushes are used for plaque removal. And then there's also a niche product called the Gumline, called the rubber tip, that is used to massage the gums. So what we kind of saw is products are either developed to remove biofilm or massage the gums. And we thought, why not fuse the two together? So that's what we wanted to do, because we also know, Mike, that like giving people more steps to follow, more products to do, sometimes can become a burden. And if you're already using one product, like, is it really necessary to kind of add on a lot of other things to your routine? So we thought, like, why not, number one, like fuse the two products together, but two, we also wanted to make the product user-friendly. And by that, I mean that the materials that we use, especially for the tip part that is supposed to trace along your gum line for our Gumline Cleaner, is incredibly soft. So I'm not sure if your users can actually see the video or if it's just going to be an audio format for your community. But this is our Gumline Cleaner in one of our colors. And the tip here is ultra soft. So if you kind of notice, there's no sharp edges over on the tip. There's no likelihood for you to scratch and harm your gums. And that's also a big difference from the gum massaging tool that's on the market. It has a very sharp tip and it's very pointy. So right out the box, if you accidentally misuse it, you can poke, scratch, and cause bleeding to your gums, which is obviously the opposite of what you want to do. So to kind of go back, we wanted to fuse a few benefits together, and we wanted to make it a lot more user friendly.
Was that kind of difficult? Because I'd imagine the reason why that those other products are hard is because you need to remove their aim is to remove the biofilm, right? But the soft products I'd imagine are more to massage the gum. Has it been hard to let me know if that's right, first of all, and secondly, has it been hard to actually find that kind of balance when it comes to actually building out your product?
Well, so what's interesting is when I mentioned the hard material. So this is again our product. There's a product that I guess aesthetically has a rubber tip, but it comes out to a pointed tip at the end, which the pointed tip is not needed because the product isn't meant to kind of go in between the teeth. So it's not doesn't need to be that pointy, and making something that sharp in addition to the durometer of the material, hardness of the material, is just kind of overkill in our experience. The the idea behind gum stimulation is that when people have gum problems, whether they are receding gums or bleeding gums or inflamed gums, a hack towards helping people alleviate these issues is to massage the area. Massaging the area, the gums, as well as any part in your body, is promoting blood flow to those localized areas. And so when you're improving blood flow, your blood is carrying oxygen and other key healing ingredients. So we wanted to take that effect on the body and basically target that through the gums so that the gum health can improve. And what we've noticed from a clinical standpoint is patients that have used the product in their post-operative visits, they have decreased bleeding, improved gum health. So the recessions are decreasing, they're getting healthier. And also the inflammation, the swelling is greatly decreasing. So we want a product that's soft. We want a product that isn't going to cause irritations to the soft tissue, which is one of the most gentle parts in our body. And as far as the ergonomics and the design, what's really interesting is it's a conical shape. So it's able to really curve to the angles of our teeth because our teeth are not flat. Our teeth are curved and there are angles to it. And our product designed the way that it is really able to basically curve to the curvatures of your teeth, if that makes sense. So,
how did you go about creating your first prototype?
So we had a family friend that he had worked in the manufacturing and engineering space, and he gave us a referral to an industrial engineer who did some mock product designs. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to give him inspiration for how the product should look, specifically width, height, any sort of design elements that we wanted to incorporate, similar things that are on the market, ratios, things like that. And from there, we basically had a product designer design several mock-ups of a product, and we would refine and refine and refine to the point where we got a model that we really liked. And once we had that model that we really liked, the next step was to go into manufacturing. And what we had to do was balance the design form with the what is able to be engineered. So design for manufacture, it's like DFM, it's like an acronym that a lot of manufacturers use. And so we needed to make sure that that was doable, and that was the next step that we went into.
And how long did that whole process take?
The design process, I would say, took between 1 to 3 months.
What was, I guess, like the minimum order quantity that you had to do when it came to ordering your first batch? And how did you overall think about which distribution channel you wanted to start with?
Yeah, so I'll try to plug in some holes after because there really was a lot outside of the product design element of it. Once the product was designed, and we first got some prototypes, some 3D prototypes, just to make sure that it looked good, it felt good, and then once that was done, we went over into manufacturing, and we had to create a custom steel mold for our products because the nature of manufacturing for some of your listeners who aren't as familiar with it, you have to create molds, and the molds create product, usually in large quantities. Um, but I ended up going to different because I don't naturally have a network of people that are in that space. So I had to go to conventions actually, and I met lots and lots of manufacturers. I was able to get quotes, was able to learn about their processes, and I lucked out to get a local manufacturer, which is really nice, that also had relatively low minimum order quantities. So like our MOQs are 5,000 um, parts at a time, which isn't crazy. And the part prices are also in line with what we're able to spend as well.
I appreciate you saying how you're able to find the right manufacturer by going to trade shows to learn and kind of interview different manufacturers who's the right fit, and that's great. I imagine there's a lot of advantages with having like a local manufacturer with you as well, which is great.
Yeah, what's nice, Mike, is I would even sometimes go to these conventions and I would bring like my 3D parts with me, and I would bring them and I would show them to the manufacturer and say, so, what do you think how long do you think it would take you to make something like this? Or how much do you think it would, and I would jot notes after every conversation that I have with these people. Because mostly the people that are going to these conventions are either going to be in sales, but sometimes they're engineers. They bring like an engineer or two that is at the table. So you kind of get like a free consult, which is nice, especially if you bring a part that you can talk about. And also at these conventions too, there are usually like people in related fields. So for example, like materials companies and suppliers and stuff like that. So like one engineer will tell me, oh, go check out like RTP or like another company that makes materials. And I'll go and I'll share, the parts that I have, and they'll show me um, like materials that are similar, and because different materials in the mold kind of work differently because they have different properties, and so if you have like one steel mold and you put material A and material B, they're gonna come out differently because they have just different parts. So it's interesting. So yeah.
How did you land on like the final materials to use? And was there a particular material that has been like tough to source, or maybe more expensive than you thought it would be?
Well, so first I wanted materials that are FDA compliant. So that was a big thing for me. I also wanted materials that are durable, is another thing. So for the tip, for example, I really wanted a silicone-like material because it's tear resistant, and it's also very soft. So that was something that I looked for in that specifically. I also wanted materials that are eco-friendly. So on the spec sheets for the materials, I would ask if they are recyclable. And there are different grades with which they are recyclable, but that was a key element that I wanted. And yeah, and then also readily available, and also materials that um, aren't overkill for what they are. What's interesting is that there are certain industries like aerospace, for example, where um, performance materials can cost significantly more than other materials, and that just kind of comes down to things that are they'll have like absurd like either like chemical or like tensile like elements that just make it like unbelievable, and we don't need that level of performance just like from a day-to-day perspective. So I just try to kind of keep it to um, what I described earlier as far as like FDA compliance, and I wanted something that was durable and recyclable, and readily available. So that's kind of what I was envisioning people experience with on a day-to-day basis. That would make sense for them.
No, that makes That makes a ton of sense. In terms of how you're thinking about it when it came to which particular what qualities you were looking for in your particular materials. Talk to me a little bit about the distribution. What was your first? How did you think once you got your minimum order quantity and now you have product? How did you overall think about the distribution side to Boz?
You know what's interesting, Mike, is I had a very crystal clear idea for what would make a lot of sense. And it wasn't until I actually started working on that funnel that I started realizing more about it, because you could theorize before you really go to market with something, and it can make all the sense in the world, right? Our initial framework was, let's sell directly to dental offices. We'll sell it to them at wholesale numbers, and dental offices perform treatment on patients where this product makes a lot of logical sense as an add-on to that treatment for at-home care. Um, the idea, why I thought that idea would, carry a lot of weight is because when people are in their dental offices, A, they're thinking about their teeth. B, they are speaking with professionals that more often than not they trust. C, when a professional gives a recommendation, that carries added weight than if someone's like scrolling on their phone and see an ad, or whether they're at like a CVS and they see dozens of competing products lie next to each other. And then also D, if the patient has any questions, then they can get answers to that question by their professional right there. So I always saw dental offices as being the perfect storm for distributing dental products. Um, Now, what I didn't foresee is that dental offices just do not like, um, I don't think selling is the right word for it, or um, recommending or bundling or distributing, but there's some sort of block, which is really interesting. And that's at least how dental offices have been like up to date. Now, I don't know if this is like a blockbuster model that's just outdated and going to be, kind of taken over by some other model, but um, dental offices even have a hard time selling like Sonicare brushes, like electric toothbrushes from companies that have massive budgets, which is really interesting. So it's not just a product thing; it's just an industry, a category thing, um, and so that was our realization. Our thought was going to dental offices would be great. The dentist can educate the patient. The dentist usually would order bulk items at a time, which is also nice. And there's also a recurring element of it as well. But we had to shift a little bit because we were just noticing that that framework, as logical as it was in our minds, just the practical day to day just didn't really live up to that. So
Why, when it came to that sales channel, why don't you makes all the sense in the world how you were thinking about it? And okay, this would be such a great distribution channel for us because you have because of course, as you say, when someone is there getting their getting teeth work, they're going to be thinking about their teeth and improving their teeth, and their dentist right there, if they give a recommendation that carries a lot of weight to it. Why do you think that sales that as a sales channel doesn't quite work overall? Like you said, they even have a hard time with Sonicare products. Is it because dentists just don't really want to like promote products? Do you think that I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, even like my experience at dentist, like my dentist never really promotes products. I even have to ask her like, what do you recommend when it came to toothpaste? But it was never, she telling me which toothpaste would be good for my teeth, if that makes sense. What do you think in your mind is like the challenge about that sales channel?
yeah, that's a great question. So dentists usually, and I'm speaking about the community that I know, dentists typically own the practice. It's either a private practice or sometimes there's corporate dentistry and DSOs. But let's say if we're talking about private practices in which the dentist owns the practice, usually a lot of dentists that I know are not necessarily preventative focused. Um, Dental hygienists are more preventative focused. But in areas that I cover, dental hygienists don't own their own practices, and I know there are states in which dental hygienists can own their own practices, but in California specifically, or areas that I know of specifically, it's usually the dentist that is kind of managing that end. They're not a these dentists are not preventative focused. And the second thing too, Mike, is a dentist has like chair time, right? Only so much chair time with their patient. And let's say if the patient is running late, for example, or let's say their next patient's running early, for example, or if there's some sort of complication, right? They don't want to maybe spend 5 or 10 or 15 minutes like answering preventative questions from you when that time can go into their next $3,000 case that they're waiting on, that the patient's waiting in the operatory room for. So it also kind of comes in, there's also like an economic sense to it as well, which I understand. And I think it's also talking about when you have a second product, there is another step in the process of the dental office. And for the dentist, it kind of adds another work function to either the dental hygienist or the front desk staff. The dentist saying, hey, like, are you recommending this product to the front desk staff who's already trying to check in the patient, check out the patient, doing case presentations to the patient? Like, it's just kind of, yeah, it's adding another step. And then when you kind of look at a dental office, there usually isn't like a lot of room for like inventory. So if you have a product, for example, like this is actually our packaging for like Erewhon, but if this is operating some space, you only have like a fixed amount of space to hold it. And when products are selling out and you need to reorder it, it just kind of there does become some steps that you need to kind of reinforce to your front desk how to promote it, when to promote it, when to reorder. And yeah, I think there are a few different elements that come into play, which I now understand.
That makes total sense as to why there wasn't like the right sales channel initially. So then once you realize, okay, this is not maybe the right sales channel, what then did you pivot to when it came to distribution?
Yeah, so we are active direct to consumer. So we started pouring more efforts into that as far as uh, really building social networks and trying to build communities, especially with dental hygienists, people in the dental field, but also communities of people that are just health and wellness focused. So we started creating profiles. We started working with content creators that were clinical and also non-clinical. Um, we started doing some brand giveaways and collaborating with other brands. And newly, we got into Erewhon, which is our first retail account that was got that done earlier this year. We're super proud of, and we think that retail is another frontier going into the end of this year and following years that will be very strong for us.
How did you get into Erewhon? Did you have to apply there, or did they come? And reach out to you?
We had to apply. We had to apply with Erewhon, and they have submission forms for brands for consideration. And I think that we had a really strong story to pitch to Erewhon. We are local, as they are in Southern California. Our products are premium. Our products are eco-friendly, and yeah, we had that nice story about being a local business, being really health and wellness focused, which I think their target customers can really relate to. And I think one interesting thing is when we set up direct to consumer, we had a certain packaging form factor, which we use these lay flat pouches. Um, and what we learned with Erewhon a couple things is that number one, they needed a different packaging variant because they wanted our product to be able to stand up on their shelves. So we had to then introduce this stand-up box with a hang hole to kind of give it added versatility. And we also had to work with the supplier too. So Erewhon doesn't, or at least when we applied, didn't purchase direct from brands. So I basically I looked at all the suppliers that they were working with, and before we started working with them, I wasn't working with a supplier, and so I contacted each of them individually several times, um, and a lot of them were food and beverage focused. There weren't a lot of suppliers that worked with health and beauty products, and eventually, to kind of get some attention from them, I reached out to them to some of these suppliers, and I said, "Erewhon wants to sell our products, but they won't buy direct from me. Can you at least fill our orders to them?" And that got some responses, and I was then able to work with the supplier and change the packaging, so we were eventually approved to sell there.
Can you explain that to me a little bit more on the distribution side and how it actually works with Erewhon? So, with Erewhon, they only will if they accept you to be in their store, you have to use one of their suppliers. Is that right? What does it actually mean? So does that mean you have to sell your product to the supplier and the supplier sells it to Erewhon? What is that? What is that dynamic?
Great question. So how it works for us is Erewhon uses several suppliers. One of them being Pod Foods. Pod Foods is a supplier that we use, and Pod Foods has a vendor dashboard for us online. What happens essentially is Pod Foods will send me an inventory request. When they send me an inventory request, that means that I have to put these boxes into an inner case of several of these products. And then I put those inner cases into a master carton. And I have to ship this out to the 3PL warehouse that they work with. And once those products are in the warehouse, the products are then scanned and then added to the Pod Foods basically network of available products. And then Erewhon is able to see that Pod Foods has our product in inventory, and then Erewhon orders it direct from Pod Foods. Pod Foods then takes the product from the warehouse and they make regular shipments to Erewhon. So I don't. So in other words, like I'm not driving to these Erewhon locations and putting the products on the shelves myself. Um, I'm just putting it in a warehouse that the supplier then, they take goods from, and then they make their own, stops over to Erewhon to fill the shelves.
Got it. So with Pod Foods, they're also the distributor as well, right? They're actually the ones that are distributing like the products from the brands to Erewhon. Is that roughly right?
Exactly, yeah. And Pod Foods works with a lot of like food and beverage, and I'm sure they work with like health and wellness brands. But yeah, they have. I'm trying to think of. They're like a directory of different products that they have available, and Erewhon then just like logs in, and they just they buy what they want to buy from Pod Foods, and Pod Foods then just takes care of delivering it to them. So yeah.
Got it. So they're kind of like the distributor between you and in this case Erewhon. Understood. And in terms of Pod Foods, like, do you have to have like the finished goods to them? Do they also help on the packaging side at all on the new ones, or is that all taken care by you? When it came to that new packaging that you had to do for Erewhon?
Got it. Yeah, we do everything. So I send Pod Foods the finished product. And yeah, everything has like barcodes. So there are barcodes for the final retail product, barcodes for inner cases, and barcodes for master cartons. And yeah, everything's ready. So they just open up, um, the different containers and then just load these up on the shelves. But yeah, they're ready to go.
How do you think when it comes to replenishing inventory and ordering new inventory. How do you think about balancing? You obviously have the D2C channel, which is what you started with, and now you have one retailer. How do you think about how much product to actually order? And also at the same time, it's different too in the product, not the product itself, but the packaging is different as well. How do you think about overall, like what percentage to actually goes, to Erewhon via Pod Foods versus like D2C?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What's nice is that um, since we do have to order like in bunches of 5,000 plus units at a time, it's typically the case where we buy a lot of inventory and we're then just kind of assembling it and putting it in different types of packaging. We haven't yet run into the case where we're constantly ordering more or we have this backlog of inventory. We're still nimble enough to where we can accommodate orders on the direct to consumer side and orders on the retail side. We have a bunch of pouches and boxes still that we have left over, but what's nice is that I'm going back to the same packaging people, so they already have our invoice, they already have our order, artwork, etc. It's not like I'm doing a lot of legwork, and the turnaround time is pretty reasonable as well. So that is also like pretty good. Like I can get like thousands of these in about a month, which is nice. Um, so I guess that's also the benefit of having everything made here is um, we're really quick to um, we're really quick to get new stock, new product in, and we're agile. So yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, it's great that you also have quick turnaround in terms of the product that you're able to actually produce in what seems like large quantities in not that much time, which is great. Um, how do you also think about on the Erewhon side, like investing in Erewhon to make sure that will be a successful sales channel for you and a profitable one long term?
Yeah, that's a great question. So keep in mind, I don't have experience in retail for brands before. So this is all like very new to me. And what I will say though, I got tremendous help from just a random LinkedIn message actually. I was messaged on LinkedIn by someone who is a consultant for the CMTC, the California Manufacturer. I have to send you the link after because I don't want to butcher it. But what that organization did was it provided a grant that translated to a consultant helping me work on my business. And the consultant that I got was an expert at retail. And so her name is Wendy, and she is wonderful. I highly recommend Wendy for people that are able to work with her. But Wendy really helped give me ideas for ways in which I can make sure that my journey at Erewhon was going to be successful. So getting on the shelves is one thing, but then getting off the shelves is very important because if you get on the shelves and your product isn't selling, then you're in some danger zone because chances are um, the market or the retailer may want to introduce new products to see how they're doing, and to introduce those new products, since there's only a finite amount of space available, they may have to offload some of the poor performing products that they have available. So you really don't want to get into that poor performing product category. So as far as ways in which I've tried to be a good partner to Erewhon, I have done team trainings with our Gumline Cleaner. So by that I mean I would schedule time with each of the Erewhon locations, and I would drive over with boxes of inventory samples for some of the Erewhon team members, and I would just like educate them about the brand and about the product. So specifically, if you walk into an Erewhon and a team member, kind of catches you looking at our Gumline Cleaner, and you ask them, "Hey, so what does this product do?" They'll be able to tell you more often than not. Oh, this is the Gumline Cleaner by Boz. It was made by a celebrity periodontist in Beverly Hills. It's meant to help people fight gum disease. And they'll give you the whole, spiel without me being there, which is nice. Um, So that was like one like really fun thing that I was able to do. Um, and sometimes I would have like kind of fun contests for the team at Erewhon as well. So that was like a kind of like a fun thing that they would all enjoy. And um, yeah, it's about like generating excitement from the people that are there that are presenting your product to customers and people that come by. So that's what we've seen.
No, that's awesome. Because I'd imagine it's a bit harder since you're not a food and bev product, a new food and bev product where you can't just sample and having samples at grocery stores and what have you in order for people to try it and see if they like the product or not. Right? It's that must be a bit since you're not one of those products that's to actually show people how this would help your gums, help your teeth. It's a difficult kind of ask for them to like understand. So it totally makes sense on your side to kind of educate the people that are working there about Boz and and the overall product in order for them to educate the consumer as well.
Yeah, and also give them product to try at home as well. Because if they've used the product at home, then they can. It's actually funny, Mike. So I walked into, actually, before I did any team training, I walked into one of the Air One locations and I was just curious where my product was, like lying on the shelves. And I, one of the people at the store kind of comes up to me and asks if I'm looking for anything specific that they can help me with. And I just told her, I said, "Oh, I'm just looking at some of your dental products." And she said, "Well, is there somewhere I can guide you? Are you looking for toothpaste products or are you looking for other types of oral care?" And I said, "No, I have toothpaste. I was just looking at your other dental products." And I kid you not, Mike. She said, "Well, there's this really interesting gum care product called the Gumline Cleaner by Boz. We just got this in not too long ago, and my mom uses this product every day, and she loves it." I was staring at her, and I was just trying to hold my excitement back, um, to the point where I was like, "I should hire you." And she was like laughing, but she didn't understand like what was going on. And I said, "I'm Jonathan Elbaz with Boz," and she goes, "Oh my God, like that's so cool." But yeah, it's really funny. So sometimes I've had like an experience like that, which is really really rewarding.
That's awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. How also do you think about financing your inventory as well as now since you have multiple sales channels? How do you think overall when it comes to financing? Are you thinking about using debt? Are you thinking about using cash? What are you thinking currently?
Yeah, so I would definitely think about using debt. Um, I would definitely think about using debt. I would want to preserve as much cash as possible because I mean, yeah, getting product into the stores is one thing, but like I mentioned, like making sure you have the resources to advertise so that the product can fly off the shelf is so important. Um, and Yeah, I'm actually right now, interestingly enough, in a position where I'm looking into financing methods. I haven't yet finalized something, but if I wanted to place a bulk order, for example, I'm looking into solutions or ways in which I can finance that because some people will pay you 0% up front and they'll pay you, let's say, 90 days after receipt or 60 days after receipt, which means you have to finance everything on your own and hope that there's no modifications or any tweaks to that, right? Um, yeah. And if it's 6 months later or 9 months later, I mean, you could be in a tight spot. Um, but I'm still exploring. I'm still exploring that those ways. But I'd be more comfortable with debt personally.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's one of those things that in this market, obviously with any business, cash is king. You can't run out of cash, and it makes sense when you have like a net 60, a net 90 that you need to exploring debt because just cash flow wise, it just doesn't work. You really that's a lot of cash to put into the inventory cycle. Also, it's difficult too, just because rates are so much higher now than what they used to be as well. So you're also juggling with that too. I know you're an emerging company, but have you had any so far issues with dead stock or inventory that you've been unable to sell?
Ooh, a dead stock or inventory I was unable to sell. Fortunately, I haven't been in a dire position to where that would affect me that much. Yeah, there are certain parts that were made that weren't sufficiently molded well, or they were molded poorly. In which case, I would just like throw those parts out. So like the certain parts of inventory kind of squeeze through QC without red flags, but I would later take care of it. But there hasn't been any crippling um, event that I've seen that kind of prevented me um, from selling. Now, I will tell you though, Mike, there has been sometimes sometimes I've gone to the factory and I've picked up parts and I've had to inspect parts on the spot because sometimes they've made one SKU that I didn't want and they loaded that up and I've said, look, these aren't what I wanted. This isn't the part number that I requested, and then they would have to go and do a new batch. But I caught it pretty early on, so it wasn't like I was out of inventory and relied on product that was the wrong product, and I was out of stock and didn't have a way to fill my customers. So fortunately, I haven't had that experience, but that's the closest thing I would mention.
Makes sense to me because you're also a durable product, where if you don't sell the inventory, all the inventory, the next 3 months, it's okay. There's no real hard expiry dates, I'd imagine, unlike there are with food and bev. So you don't really have, you may not have dead stock as much dead stock issues. I feel like the only dead stock I'd imagine is just because of the packaging, where like if you weren't able to sell in store, for example, with that packaging, then maybe you have to repackage it in order to sell it online. But still, like you can still repackage it and what have you. That makes a lot of sense. My final question for you, Jonathan: what would you value more, today's market, or today? What would you value more? $100 of inventory, $100 of COGS, or $100 cash?
$100 of inventory. If the number was different, if the number was higher, maybe I would change my perception on things. Just because I think with $100 of cash, there isn't a lot that I could do with that on the marketing front that I could then use to like propel sales. And we do have a subscription element of our business. And so it's always good kind of keeping people subscribed to have inventory to fill those orders. But yeah, I mean, if you're asking me about, let's say 10 grand or more than that, and I'm thinking that I could work with some influencer partners that have great reach and a great track record of promoting product, then maybe that my answer would change. But
no, that makes sense. I mean, how I see it, like on face value, is since that $100 of inventory is worth more than cash, then take inventory every time, right? Because if there is any type of demand for your product, then that $100 of inventory is gonna be worth more. At the same time, as a previous guest pointed out, there's very few products that literally just sell with no marketing dollars attached to it. So you will need some money to on the marketing side in order to have it get into the hands of consumers. Yeah, I really appreciate your response. It's great.
of course, yeah, I think subscriptions are really a great vehicle for a lot of companies that can offer it. So that's that was also playing a role in my thought process. But yeah,
Cool. Well, Jonathan, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time.
of course, you as well. Take care, Mike.
And there you have it. It was a pleasure chatting with Jonathan. Jonathan, thanks again for coming on the podcast. This show is brought to you by Manufactured. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands manufacture, finance, and distribute inventory across 20 industries in 25 countries. If you're interested in learning more, check out manufactured.com. Thanks for listening.